The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The big news from over the weekend, just as Senator Bernie Sanders started to address an audience of thousands of people at a campaign event in Seattle, a group of Black Lives Matter activists stormed the stage, grabbed the microphone. The protesters, of course, this Black Lives Matters movement has surged from the high-profile killings of black men in the United States by U.S. police officers, and it ended up preventing Bernie Sanders from delivering a speech. He could not convince the protesters to give back control of the stage, waited a few minutes for them to finish, and ultimately was not able to speak. One of the women who identified with the Black Lives Matter movement spoke for a little while. Here's just about 20 seconds of that speech.
Bernie Sanders, I would like to welcome you to this place called Seattle, which is actually occupied Duwamish land, stolen, and hypocritically named after Chief Sealth. We are located in King County, where the silhouette of Martin Luther King reigns high, while we spend $210 million building a new jail to imprison black children.
After 20 minutes of waiting, Bernie Sanders tried to restart his rally, was pushed aside once again. Ultimately, he had to leave the stage, Lewis, who is back joining us, waving goodbye before shaking hands and posing for some pictures. He said formally, "I'm disappointed that two people disrupted a rally attended by thousands, was especially disappointed because on criminal justice reform and the need to fight racism, there is no other candidate for president who will fight harder than me." Lewis, I had several thoughts when I saw this. Number one, Bernie Sanders needs more of a security presence. Number two, there is nothing more undemocratic than preventing Bernie Sanders from speaking. This is making the Black Lives Matter movement look terrible. And third, why is this mostly happening to Bernie Sanders and not other candidates? We're going to address that later, Lewis, so let's put that aside for now. Don't you think that this is hurting the Black Lives Matter movement, particularly because Bernie Sanders is the guy whose policies are most on their side?
Right. And you know, I think it's a movement that, you know, there are going to be people in that movement that you just can't make them happy no matter what happens. And it's not really, I wouldn't call it a highly organized movement, right? You've kind of got people kind of taking it upon themselves to speak for the movement and speak for everyone in it, and they kind of do their own thing.
Yes and no. I'm going to address later how organized the movement is, but I know what you're saying in terms of how united everybody is on the message. I agree there.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is, of course, like you said, undemocratic. If you know, Bernie certainly needs a security presence, just, you know, a few people to stop this type of thing from happening.
And you know, Lewis, and the audience knows that I have no problem at all with interrupting speeches and heckling in principle, right, as a tactic. But those are tools and tactics to be used intelligently. And to go up there and to focus on Bernie Sanders, the candidate who has made it very clear that his policies would bring the most positive change to the group that is being primarily supported by the ideas of the Black Lives Matter movement. And this is also a sort of crying wolf in the sense that we have huge systemic problems to deal with. But choosing to target Bernie Sanders specifically is the absolute wrong way to go about it. And in the same way that I agree with traditional feminist ideology, that doesn't mean that any extremist feminist that the anti-feminist group activists point out to me, I don't agree with every single person who is a so-called feminist activist. I completely support the idea of the Black Lives Matter movement. That does not mean, Lewis, that I have to support every individual action taken by anyone claiming to be part of that movement.
Yeah, and I can understand, you know, most people, when we see them attempt something like this, they yell a few things, they get their message out quickly with the expectation of being removed from the podium or from in front of it or wherever they are. And they just completely took over the microphone and turned it into a Black Lives Matters event. And I just think it was in some ways more disrespectful way more disrespectful than just yelling out, making a quick scene and ending it.
As a user on our Reddit discussion forum said, I couldn't possibly be more supportive of Black Lives Matter, but there are people within every organization who are capable of tearing it down with their lack of tact, sense, and political acumen. Two possibilities came to mind as I thought about this. Maybe these are not really Black Lives Matter activists. More on that if it develops, some stories saying these could be plants. And number two, what if this is astroturf and the reason it is happening mostly to Bernie is related to following the money? Let's explore that right away. So as I told you, Bernie Sanders had another speech interrupted to the point where he couldn't continue by those purporting to be part of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I have a very, very specific idea that we need to explore seriously, which is that the anti-Bernie Sanders tinge of the Black Lives Matter movement recently could be George Soros-funded astroturf. And I will speak as specifically as possible, Lewis, and then I will allow you, Lewis, to tell me what you think about this. It's widely on record that George Soros, the liberal billionaire, has poured a ton of money into two movements that were instrumental in creating Black Lives Matter and the buzzword. Dating back to January, we knew that George Soros spent over $30 million bankrolling Ferguson demonstrators. And of course, Ferguson relates to Officer Darren Wilson, who killed unarmed teenager Michael Brown and was ultimately not charged. This includes support by George Soros of groups like Color Lines News for Action, Organization for Black Struggle, which then established the Hands Up Coalition. Soros also gave money to the Drug Policy Alliance, which worked on pushing Black Lives Matter as a buzzword, which has since been incorporated into speeches by political figures, including Hillary Clinton, which gets me to the next element of this story, Lewis. Let's talk about Hillary Clinton. George Soros, a huge supporter, of Hillary Clinton's. Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley happen to be the Democratic candidates who have been disrupted by the Black Lives Matter protesters, but not Hillary. And George Soros happens to be one of the top donors to Hillary Clinton's Political Action Committee. This is not about George Soros is bad. This is not about the Black Lives Matter message being bad. This is about the possibility of really ugly astroturf, because you're talking here, Lewis, about a movement that is funded by someone who is a big supporter of Hillary's, and you happen to see that movement now becoming very specifically political within the context of the Democratic primary, protesting mostly Bernie Sanders, also Martin O'Malley, but not Hillary Clinton. And the reality is that it's every single Republican who should be protested by the Black Lives Matter movement, but mostly they're focusing on Bernie, which would stand to reason is a way to try to help Hillary Clinton.
It could be argued. It could be also be argued that perhaps they think that it's completely futile to protest Republican events, or perhaps they think it will end with them being imprisoned or whatever. I mean, I can think of any number of reasons. If I did not know anything about the political system in this country and how campaigns are run and what happens behind closed doors, I would say, Dave, this sounds like a pretty crazy conspiracy theory to me. But you know what? It really doesn't sound that far-fetched.
It's amazing to me that the guy who spent his entire career fighting for the exact rights that the Black Lives Matter movement is supposed to be fighting for, marched with Martin Luther King. He's the one who is on the receiving end of these protests. Meanwhile, Donald Trump wants to build the biggest wall the world has ever seen, next to the second only to the Great Wall of China. And in spite of that, Bernie Sanders, who is the best candidate right now for social justice and racial equality and the whole thing, he will be seen now as the guy who was targeted by Black Lives Matter. And this is really, really problematic. So we've got to keep talking about this, and you know that we absolutely will. We have new jobs numbers from July now that we're into August. The expected results were achieved from the American economy with regard to jobs in July. 215,000 jobs have been added, unemployment remaining stable at 5.3%. If the current pace of job growth can be maintained, economists now expect the jobless rate to go below 5% by late 2015 or early 2016. Let me just remind the audience, Lewis, if I may, that Mitt Romney promised to get us below 6% unemployment by the end of his first term, which would have been January of 2017, of course, with the caveat that he would need to repeal Obamacare to do it. President Obama now closing in on 5% with Obamacare fully in force. And because of this consistency in moving in the right direction, the Federal Reserve now is looking at increasing interest rates slightly pretty soon. This is a good thing. There has been pretty significant concern about keeping these interbank lending rates so low indefinitely. So things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's looking good. It's a trend that's been continuing for a little while. I'm happy about it. Can we give all of the credit to Obama? No. Can we give some of it to Obama? Yes. And yeah, what else can we really say about it?
Well, we can say we do still have real issues. Wages are still an issue. Automation and jobs that are just flat out disappearing and not going to come back. Those are all issues. But in the context of what presidents are able to do with the world that we have, these are good numbers. And you'll hear all the same tired talking points about the labor participation rate, which we've debunked, about low quality jobs, which we've debunked. I don't want to go into a 15-minute explanation about it again now, but search our YouTube channel. You'll see very specific debunkings of those right-wing talking points. Much more after the break. What a program we have for you today.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Our program is funded directly by the audience through the David Pakman Show membership program at davidpakman.com/membership. Today's new member of the day is Ahmad Tatum. Ahmad, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. Ahmad not only has his own membership, Lewis, but he also actually sponsored a membership for another viewer, which is very, very nice of Ahmad to do. You can join Ahmad at davidpakman.com/membership and, of course, read about all the great member benefits that we have. If you ever shop on Amazon.com, you can support our show with the shopping you do by going to davidpakman.com and clicking on the Amazon banner on the right side of the page. I suggest bookmarking the link and using it whenever you shop. A bunch of people over the last week, Lewis, buying drum stuff through our Amazon link. So we have some other drummers in the audience. And that got me thinking about whether once we make the move to Boston, whether I will try to join another band. You know, when I was in New York City, I joined a band there and it was great. I'm definitely thinking about it.
I would like to possibly do that. I'll look into it. I'm very, very picky and, you know, it has to be just right, but I'll certainly look around.
Thank you, Lewis. I think the audience will appreciate you saying that. And also a couple of people purchasing Akira DVDs, which, Lewis, you said that you're not huge into anime, but Akira is a series or a movie or a character that you like, right?
Yeah, it was a movie, and it was a good one. It's one of the classics. Yeah, it's pretty old at this point, but I enjoy it.
All right. Remember, if you ever shop on Amazon, use the link at davidpakman.com. Just click it and shop. You won't see any forms to fill out or anything else, but you'll be sending a little kickback to the David Pakman Show. One of the big underlying stories in last week's Republican presidential debate on Fox News was that Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump kept attacking Megyn Kelly. And he continued to do that after the debate, including during a phone interview with CNN's Don Lemon, where he implied that she was bleeding from her vagina as a result of what happened during that debate. Let's go to the audio. Let's go to the video of Donald Trump here.
Talk about Megyn Kelly, because you brought her up. She did push you, pushed a lot of people, but what is it with you and Megyn Kelly?
Well, I just don't respect her as a journalist. I have no respect for her. I don't think she's very good. I think she's highly overrated. But when I came out there, you know, what am I doing? I'm not getting paid for this. I go out there and, you know, they start saying, lift up your arm if you're going to, and, you know, I didn't know there'd be 24 million people. I figured, but I knew it was going to be a big crowd because I get big crowds. I get ratings. They call me the ratings machine. So I have, you know, she gets out and she starts asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions. And, you know, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever. But she was, in my opinion, she was off base. And by the way, not in my opinion, in the opinion of hundreds of thousands of people on Twitter, because it has been a brutal day. In one way, a great day for Fox, and another day in the Twitter sphere, it's been very bad because she's been very bad.
It's fascinating because Donald Trump was the target of Fox News in that debate. I think there was no question, Lewis, that Fox News came out with an anti-Trump sort of point of view. And I think that this could not be better for the Democratic Party, because you now have a pretty significant portion of the Republican Party, at least for now, right, that is pro-Trump. They seem to be reacting very positively to Donald Trump's belligerent xenophobia and his cluelessness and his suggestion of policies that would be either impossible or illegal, as I'll outline tomorrow. He's been able to coalesce some support there. But at the same time, you also have Fox News, which is a very important agenda setter for the Republican Party. Only about 1% on a good day watch, 1% of the country's population on a good day watch a Fox News program, but Fox News is still effective at setting the Republican agenda. And this infighting of Fox versus Trump is terrifically good for the Democratic Party.
Agreed. If you look back, the past few Republican presidents or your Republican nominees definitely had the support of Fox News. I mean, Fox News was all about them, and that is not the case here. And I don't know how harmful this will be to Trump, but I mean, it can't help.
I'm actually thinking about praying, even though I'm not religious, for Donald Trump to run as an independent, because Donald Trump running as an independent, if he's able to keep not 20% support, but even just 10 or 12% support, and he runs as an independent, Donald Trump could single-handedly give the 2016 presidential election to whoever is the eventual Democratic nominee.
And he seems like he seems like a bitter person, and that's exactly what a bitter person would do when they don't win what they were trying to win.
I do agree with Donald Trump in that I also don't respect Megyn Kelly as a journalist, but it has nothing to do with the reasons Donald Trump doesn't support her. But it's still a relevant question to say, would Donald Trump treat a male journalist who had the same questions and who had the same things to say about Trump the same way that he's been treating Megyn Kelly? And I think the answer there, Lewis, is obviously not.
Definitely not. There's definitely a very noticeable misogynistic aura about Donald Trump, and I think everyone can see that.
The Democratic National Committee has announced the debate schedule for the Democratic candidates. The first debate is going to be October 13th in Nevada, just a little over 2 months away. There are 6 debates scheduled through the primary and caucus process. Each of the 4 early voting states is going to host a debate, as I said, October 13th in Nevada, November 14th in Des Moines, Iowa, December 19th in Manchester, New Hampshire, which I think we should try to go to, Lewis, January 17th in Charleston, South Carolina, and then during February or March, there will be debates in Miami, Florida, as well as somewhere in Wisconsin. This is how the DNC is going to determine who participates. The candidates must poll at least 1% in 3 national polls conducted by, quote, credible news organizations in the 6 weeks before the debate. There will be policy discussed, and that's going to make these Democratic debates very different, at least than the first Republican debate so far, which was just made up of childish, immature, sickening nonsense. And the Democrats and Republicans, as we've said many times, are similar or the same on many issues. But the debates, Lewis, are going to be very, very different. And anyone who thinks that the process should be even remotely mature and adult could not possibly vote for a Republican after that first debate we saw last week, yet almost half of the country will.
Yeah, I still expect the candidates to be dodging questions, spewing talking points instead of directly answering questions. Probably not much mention of specific policy plans or anything like that. But, of course, it will have a completely different feel than the Republican debate.
And Democratic candidate Martin O'Malley is not happy that there are only 6 debates, saying that this is a way to sort of tilt the scales in favor of Hillary Clinton by limiting the number of debates that Democrats do. I do agree conceptually that fewer debates help the establishment candidate or the sort of presumed nominee, and my preference would be to see more than 6 debates, but we don't need 26, right? And I think that the Democratic Party is in a very important place right now. 8 years of President Obama, still a lot that could be undone if a Republican ultimately wins. So there's a very strong case to be made that we need more than 6 debates, but we need to stop short of fatiguing voters with 20 debates.
Well, at the same time, we're not going to expect every voter to be watching every debate either.
Right.
How many Democratic debates will the average voter be watching? Average Democratic voter be watching? I probably won't even watch all 6. So you're right. We need more. We also need to know that, though, who will be watching and how many.
Lewis will watch one Democratic primary debate, and that's under protest. That it will be completely under protest. So certainly we need to take that into consideration. After the break, our old friend, anti-gay former Navy chaplain Gordon Klingenschmitt will join me. He is in some serious hot water, let me put it that way, as elected representative in Colorado. We'll speak to him next.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
I'm joined once again today by former Navy chaplain Gordon Klingenschmitt. Of course, the website, prayinjesusname.org. He has the YouTube show, and also, most recently, Colorado State Representative Gordon Klingenschmitt. As we talked about, I think it was the last time you were on, Chaplain, you had about 70% of the vote, defeating Democrat Lois Fornander in the race for what was then a vacated seat. How are things going legislatively? What have been some of your big legislative accomplishments to date?
Well, thank you, David, for having me on the show. Of course, I'm appearing today in my capacity as Dr. Chaps with the Pray in Jesus' Name news program. I am not speaking for the Republican Party, although
no, that's
I can talk
for sure.
about
We'll
politics.
talk about that a little bit later. Yeah, it seems the last thing they want is you speaking for them, but go on.
But yes, I am. In another world, I'm a state representative and I vote on bills in the Capitol in Denver. And of course, I defend the Constitution. So Monday through Friday, I wear my legislative hat and I vote on religious freedom for everybody, whether you're Christian, Jewish, atheist, Muslim, it doesn't matter. Everybody ought to have constitutional rights. And for example, one of the issues that I fight for is everybody's right to opt out of somebody else's religious ceremony. Right now in Colorado, there are people being forced to participate in gay weddings. For example, Jack Phillips, the baker in Denver. And our Colorado Constitution says that you don't have to support somebody else's religious ceremony, but he is being forced by government sword to do that. So
let's take it a step at a time, though, because Chaplain, whoa, you're blowing things up all of a sudden. Couple things on that. Number one, if there's a gay couple getting married, that is not by definition a religious ceremony, right? They're being married. It's a civil marriage by the state. So first of all, if someone were, let's put aside for a second that I don't think anyone is being forced to participate in the gay wedding. If you were forced to participate in a so-called gay wedding, if it's a civil wedding, right? If it's at the city courthouse, that is not a religious ceremony.
Oh, it's absolutely religious.
How do you figure?
Just because their religion may be liberal Christian or Jewish, who often participate in homosexual weddings in their synagogue or in their church, or even if it was at a courthouse, it's certainly a practice of their religion, which may even be atheism. It's a religion. And so we don't have to participate or support somebody else's religion under the Colorado Constitution. David, I'm surprised at you. You're for separation of church and state. You really want to force people to participate in your religious views? That's not right.
No, well, so first of all, again, I disagree that if a civil marriage is taking place at a city building, that is a religious ceremony. But putting that aside for a second, to say that businesses have to play by certain rules, one of those rules being you can't discriminate against people based on their sexual orientation, is not forcing anybody to do anything religious. It's for example, if you're in the health insurance business, there are certain overarching rules that to be a private business in that industry, you have to abide by. In other businesses or industries, we would say, well, listen, your religious beliefs are whatever they are, to be a business in this capacity, there are just certain rules to abide by, one of those being no discrimination based on sexual orientation.
You know, back in the days when the Romans were persecuting the Christians, they would make them take a little cup of wine and pour it out before the emperor and say, well, our law is that you have to bow before the emperor as if he is a god. And then we'll let you do business. Then we'll let you keep your life. But if you don't do that, then we're going to kill you because you refuse to worship Caesar as if he is God.
Yeah.
If you truly believe in separation of church and state, then you've got to stand up for people like Baronel Stutzman, the florist, who is being forced. Do you think she's not being forced? She's losing her business. Or, of course, the Huguenons, the photographers in New Mexico.
Yeah, but Chaplain, these things have nothing. The business owners may say it's about religion, but from the point of view of the state, they're just not allowed to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or race or gender or whatever else. You're making it about religion, but it's not. It's very simple non-discrimination statutes.
Well, Christians do have sincerely held views of conscience. And it's harmful to the gay person for us to violate our conscience and say, oh no, your sin is not really sin. We're going to bless that. We're going to endorse that as if it is good, because that hurts and it deceives the gay person into hell. When we give our endorsement, our blessing, it's almost like we're saying God approves that. And God does not approve that. That would be a lie. We would be lying to the people we're called to love. Yeah. So we would rather love them and tell them the truth.
Well, it may almost feel like that to you, but it's actually not from the point of view of the law. But we're probably not going to agree on this. I do want to get to one of the areas where you made some news lately, which is that after the Boy Scouts of America said, we're no longer going to ban gay adults from being troop leaders or being involved in the organization, you said that this is a really big risk to kids because they're essentially at risk of being molested by gay scout leaders. Is the implication there that gay people are more likely to be child molesters than straight people? Is that what you're implying?
Well, they're certainly not as trustworthy as straight people. If you ask the average Christian parent, who do you want to be a babysitter for your kid? Do you want somebody that has a history of being out there sexually, or do you want somebody who has a history of being conservative sexually? It's a matter of trust for the parents ought to have control of their own children.
But hold on a second, Chaplain. We've got to, let's do an analysis of what you just said. You said that gay people are certainly not as trustworthy as straight people. And as evidence of, but hold on a second. And as evidence of that, you told me that if you ask Christian parents who they would trust more, they wouldn't trust the gay person more. But that's a logical fallacy there. That's like if I say to you, listen, Chaplain, police... Well, hold on a second, Chaplain. Hold on. Let me just follow the logic here. If I say to you, doctors are not trustworthy, and you say to me, David, give me some evidence of that. And I say, hey, I just polled 20 parents and they don't trust doctors. That's not evidence that the doctors are not trustworthy or worthy of trust. All it is saying that there's a group of parents that doesn't trust doctors. That's essentially what you said.
Well, it's the same with the new policy in the Boy Scout. There will be a group of troop leaders who don't trust and do not select open homosexuals to be their troop leaders. And the reasons for that may be numerous. Maybe the person is immoral in some other way, but certainly if they're out there, listen, the Boy Scout oath says that we are to honor God and to keep ourselves morally straight. That's right there in the Boy Scout oath. Now they're violating that, turning it on its head, saying, no, you don't have to be morally straight and you can still be a leader of the Boy Scouts, not just a leader, but an adult sleeping with teenage boys in the woods. That is going to lead. Now, listen, Jim McDonough is a city councilman, I think in Minnesota. I talked to him on the phone. He is suing the Boy Scouts. Why? Because as a 40-year-old man, he remembers what it was like when he was 12, when he was in the woods with his Boy Scout leader who molested not just him, but 4 other boys are in that lawsuit. And we need to stand up against this. The Boy Scout change in policy is making boys more vulnerable to lawsuits like this. And it's ultimately going to lead to the destruction of the Boy Scouts, I'm afraid.
I just have a hard time taking seriously this sort of moral stand that you're making with regard to the risk of child molestation by adult gays in the Boy Scouts when you recently had Dwight David Doherty, a right-wing activist who was twice convicted of sexually assaulting children, presumably heterosexual as far as I know. You had him on as a sort of expert. Shouldn't we be worried about that?
Well, the challenge is that not every child molester tells you that he is a convicted child molester.
Right, but they're also not all on your program, and you had one on your show.
Yeah, we had no idea. Honestly, we met this guy at the Western Conservative Summit. He's a black guy, wants to talk about conservatives of color and race issues from a Republican perspective. Great. He was recommended to us. Great. We interviewed him. He talked about that. Never once told us of his past background. If he had told us, we probably would have chosen not to interview him. So,
would you accept that defense from a liberal group who had a convicted child molester on their ranks? Would you say, well, hey, listen, they just didn't know. They didn't look into it. It's no big deal. It's no indictment on them at all. Is that the same defense you would give of a liberal group?
Well, it's certainly the defense I would give of a parent who wants to hire a babysitter.
Okay.
They really maybe they ought to do a background check and find out, hey, this guy's a convicted child molester. I'm not going to have him sleeping in the woods with my sons unsupervised. The Boy Scouts ought to be doing background checks on every one of their troop leaders before they hire them to make sure that they're not have a history of abusing children.
So if the Boy Scouts do that, if the Boy Scouts take your advice and they say, okay, we're not going to focus on labels like sexual orientation. We're just going to do a background check and look at what the facts are with regard to individuals' past. Why wouldn't you be okay with a gay or straight troop leader as long as the background check was clean, right?
Right. Well, many of the Boy Scout troops are specifically organized around churches.
Okay.
And Southern Baptist churches or Mormon churches are great examples. And when they do a background check, let's say it's not even a criminal discovery, but they just see that the guy was marching in a gay pride parade.
Would that be in a background check?
No, I'm saying that if they discovered that incidentally, or let's say the troop leader walked in and announced himself, I'm openly gay and I want the job.
Yeah.
You know what? That's a disqualifier for most Christian church organizations because they don't want to violate the trust of the parents. They don't want to set a bad example for the children. They want to keep the Boy Scout oath that we will remain morally straight.
Well, that's certainly a sad commentary on a lot of those groups. I want to very quickly, in the limited time we have left, just go back to what you alluded to at the beginning. After you made those comments, the Colorado Republican Party said, we condemn what Gordon Klingenschmitt is saying about the Boy Scouts and child molesters and gay people. Your relationship with the Republican Party is not particularly strong right now, is it?
Well, listen, what I say on my Sunday TV show as Dr. Chaps in my Christian ministry is really none of the business of the Democrat Party or the Republican Party. Those two parties ought to be defending religious freedom for everybody. And that's what I do when I'm in the State House of Representatives on Monday through Friday. I defend religious freedom for everybody to preach what they want on Sunday. If they're going to pick and choose my Bible verses and say, as the Republican Party, you're not allowed to quote these Bible verses, but it's okay to quote these Bible verses. Here's what I ask. Just pick out a Gideon's Bible, take it out of a hotel room, and take a black magic marker and mark out all of the Bible verses that I'm not allowed to quote in church, and then mail it to me. And when I get that, then I'll know which Bible verses are illegal, according to some leaders in the Republican Party. Honestly, they're not speaking for the Republican platform, which calls for religious freedom for everybody, which calls for freedom of speech, which calls for defending the constitutional right to quote the Bible in church, all of the Bible, not just the pretty verses or the popular verses. We should have freedom to quote even the unpopular verses in church. And if some Republican or Democrat, by the way, the chairman of the Democrat Party in Colorado lied about me to his email list, and this is confirmed by the Colorado Springs Gazette.
All right, well, that we're now getting into the minutia now. I don't know that the specifics of that are going to be relevant to our audience.
David, your audience would love this. This is a big story, breaking news. That the Gazette openly called the Democrat chair a liar, pretty much. I'm paraphrasing.
So not exactly. Gotcha.
Klingenschmitt never said that he called for gays to be drowned. And that's true. I never called for violence against any person.
Okay.
They twisted that. All I did was quote the Bible. I quoted Jesus from Matthew 18:6, and they freaked out. They said, no, you're not allowed to quote Jesus because you're not a Christian if you quote Jesus. Well, gee, I wonder why they call him Jesus Christ. He is a Christian, and I'm a Christian when I quote Jesus.
All right. Well, there is a mouthful. He certainly said it all. Former Navy chaplain and current Colorado State Representative Gordon Klingenschmitt. It's a fascinating point of view, and we're going to continue certainly making people aware that it exists in this country. Chaplain, thank you so much for joining us.
One last thing before you go. When we all stand before God someday, we're not going to bow our knee to the Republican Party. We're not going to bow our knee to the Democrat Party.
Right.
We are going to bow our knee to Jesus Christ. And if they disagree with him, then let him decide.
If there's ever been a more heartwarming message, I've certainly never heard it. Chaplain, thank you.
Thank you, David. God bless you in Jesus' name. Bye-bye.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
So Lewis is back with us in advance of the move to Boston, Massachusetts. He's made it back from Austin, Texas to Massachusetts. And you missed this segment last week, Lewis, because you were traveling. But we're continuing to flush out the eventual name of the network that we're going to be creating with additional programs. And we got a bunch of suggestions last week, and then we got a bunch of new ones. So the idea is when we get to Boston, we're going to not only have the David Pakman Show, but we're going to start creating additional programming. And we need some sort of overarching network name that will encompass everything that we're doing. And here are some of the better ideas from last week and some new ones that we received. And I'll run some of these by you, Lewis, and by the audience, and we'll continue to work it out. In television news network, the Progress Network, Progressive Innovative Truth Exchange, also known as the PIT Exchange, the Independent Mind Network, which could be abbreviated IMN, which kind of sounds like the I'm In network, IFNN, the Independently Funded News Network, and then a bunch that include my name, like David Pakman Media, which would be DPM, the David Pakman Media Group, DPMG, the David Pakman Progressive Initiative, DPPI, the Pakman Progressive Network, or PPN, Forward Progress Media, which would be FPM, which I think sounds a little too similar to FGM, which is the abbreviation for female genital mutilation, so I'm kind of leaning against that. Modern Liberal Media, Progressive Modern Media, the Modern Media Network, News and Politics, which would be NIP, which I don't know that that's the best abbreviation. The Network for Independent Journalism, which would be NIDJ. Don't know that that's a great idea. The Progressive Watch Network, Progressive View Programming, Progressive News and Politics, the Independent News Daily. I don't think having the word daily in there is good because some of our shows might not be daily. Who knows? Progressive Independent News Network, which would be PIN, PINN, the Progressive Report, TPR, and then a couple funny ones. The David Pakman Representative Kinship, which would abbreviate to the DPRK. And I think maybe that we want to avoid. The Elders of Pakman. And then this is one of my favorites, Lewis. Any number of networks. Some of the best options from last week: the Progressive Angle Network, the Progressive Source Network, Progressive News Now, the Political Overview Network, News Pack, PackView, the PackView Network, or PVN. And of course, there's Old Faithful, Lewis, TDPN, which could kind of be the David Pakman Network, but it will just eventually be TDPN. Some people thought that that was good. Any thoughts so far?
Well, TDPN does have a nice ring to it, but I really like the Elders of Pakman. I know we can't use that, but it's very funny. And so I'm not sure. I have to review these and think it over.
Keep sending in ideas, but also if you heard me say one that you think is really the best choice, let us know as well. And we'll eventually have a poll. Also, one of the great things we're going to be doing at the new studio, Lewis, is we'll have the more traditional sort of news set like we've had for years, but we're also going to have a more casual library type set for interviews, longer interviews, and other programming. And for a library set, you need a lot of books in the background, and we don't really have that many books to fill bookcases with. So if you in the audience have extra books that you've been thinking of getting rid of, if you have some specific books you want to send to us that you think would be cool or clever to have as part of our backdrop, we are now accepting book donations so that we can eventually set up this cool looking library set. You can send them. You don't have to email me. You don't have to do anything. You can just box them up and send them to The David Pakman Show, care of Attorney Gove, Gove, at 277 Main Street, Suite 206 in Northampton, Massachusetts, 01060. Any books you want to get rid of. I think this is a good way, Lewis. Books, oftentimes people don't know how to get rid of books, right? It's kind of annoying. You either have to bring them somewhere or sell them one by one. Send us your books, and a piece of your book collection will be part of our set, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. I know plenty of people who have lots of books lying around that will never end up anywhere, so we could put them to a good use here.
And lastly, we are taking submissions for the 2016 Hatriot Mail Calendar. I have here the 2015 Hatriot Mail Calendar. We sold around 125 of these. My goal would be to sell 200 2016 calendars. Every image in the book, with the exception of one which is from Lewis, was created by a David Pakman Show viewer. And we are taking submissions for the 2016 calendar. The only requirements, Lewis, are that they be 8.5 by 11 at 300 DPI resolution. And of course, when I say 8.5 by 11, the landscape orientation, not portrait, so that they're oriented properly. I'm really looking forward. We already got one great image from Ryan Conway called The Tally Baptists, which is really good. And there's still 11 months plus the cover available.
Yeah, last time it was a huge success, and we had some very creative work on there. I can't wait to see the new images. It's going to be great.
There's a Colorado River which has been turned to yellow sludge by the EPA itself. This is the Animas River, which is a popular kayaking destination. It's now this ugly yellow-orange color filled with 3 million gallons of contaminants, and the Environmental Protection Agency is taking a blame for the spill, which happened when an EPA team was using heavy equipment to enter the Gold King mine, which is a shuttered mine near Durango, Colorado. And instead of entering the mine and pumping and treating the contaminated water, the team accidentally caused it to flow into the river. Absolute disaster, Lewis, contaminating drinking water.
Yeah, if this is their job and they are trained professionals on how to handle this, I mean, like I always say, 80% of people are incompetent at their jobs. I see that happening here as well. And I saw pictures of people kayaking in there despite this sickly color. I would not do that. I think I would avoid that water altogether.
A slew of heavy metals, including cadmium and aluminum and copper and perhaps even arsenic. But I want to make one thing clear. Everybody on the right is flipping out saying this is proof we shouldn't have the EPA. Remember, the EPA is there to clean up a mess made by a private corporation. Yes, they messed up the cleanup. But this is not evidence that we shouldn't have the EPA. This is evidence that if the EPA were more strongly regulating pollution and this waste product from private corporations, we might not even have to do this cleanup in the first place.
Right. We certainly need more regulation when it comes to stuff like this, but it's a really tough battle, battling all these giant corporations.
Our voicemail number is 219-2-DAVID-P. The Eggman decided to check in with his thoughts about Lewis's road trip from Austin back to Massachusetts. The Eggman is not happy. Take a listen to this.
Lewis, you lazy piece of crap. How long is it going to take you to drive to Boston? I drove from Texas to Massachusetts in an air-cooled Volkswagen in 1.5 days. It's been a week now. Us liberal hippies miss you, Lewis, you lazy bastard. Turn up the AC, get to Boston, and get to work. What's up?
Yeah, I mean, Lewis, your car isn't even air-cooled, and it took you a week.
Well, it's because I wanted to see some of the country and enjoy myself and do a bit of exploring, and I really enjoyed it, Eggman. So, you know what? I suggest you do that next time. You might enjoy it.
Today on the bonus show, we will follow up about organ donation. We will talk about the world's quietest hotel room. And we will also talk about Korea's newest beauty trend. There has been some really unusual stuff going on in Korea with regard to beauty trends and plastic surgery and a bunch of other stuff. And this new one, I have to say, is quite odd, although maybe my cultural sensitivities are not taking into consideration a reason why this is perfectly reasonable. On the bonus show today, Lewis will tell us about all of those stories and more. davidpakman.com/membership. Don't miss today's bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.